Chapter 1. The life she has, the love she knows. Sierra Preston's morning alarm chimed with all the enthusiasm of a cheap motivational poster. Cheerful but slightly hollow. She stretched beneath her blankets, blinking at the faint California sun drifting through the blinds of her modest apartment. It wasn't the castle in the clouds fantasy she once imagined at 14. No distant kingdoms, no glittering gowns, no love at first sword fight duels. But it was warm, it was steady, and, most importantly, her favorite part of the world lived only a few blocks away. She rolled out of bed and padded into the tiny kitchen, flicking on the coffee maker that sputtered like it resented the early hour. While it brewed, she leaned against the counter and smiled at the message pinned to her fridge. A cheesy drawing he had made years ago. A stick figure Sierra with comically huge hair standing beside a stick figure him labeled in large all caps. Not a dork. He'd made it after she teased him mercilessly about a haircut he instantly regretted. She still thought it made him look adorable. She tapped the drawing gently. Still waiting, but no pressure, she murmured, amused. Not that she was really waiting. Not in the pining, tragic, rom-com heroine sort of way. She knew he loved her. She'd known long before he realized he did. Her mother and aunt insisted she relax and enjoy the ride until he catches up. And she had, for more than a decade. Sometimes she wondered if patience was secretly her only superpower. The coffee beeped. She grabbed her mug, inhaled the aroma like oxygen, and headed to her bedroom to finish getting ready for work at the national restaurant chain's corporate office. The job wasn't glamorous. Spreadsheets, scheduling, endless emails that somehow sounded both urgent and unnecessary, but it paid her bills and left her evenings free. And evenings were when her world made sense again. By 8:55 a.m., Sierra clocked into her cubicle. A small, polite forest of sticky notes lined the edge of her monitor, reminders of tasks she wasn't sure mattered. Her coworkers filtered in, greeting each other with the collective exhaustion of people who had accepted their careers weren't the center of their identities. At her desk, Sierra settled in and opened a new email. Another meeting, another memo, another quick request that would undoubtedly take an hour. She sighed lightly but smiled anyway. This wasn't the life she fantasized about, but she wasn't the version of herself who needed a fantasy to feel alive. Because her real day, the part that counted, would start at 6:01 p.m. When work finally ended, Sierra practically floated toward the elevator. She checked her phone. No new messages from him, but she noticed he'd posted a blurry sunset photo on social media earlier. Very on-brand. He'd always loved capturing ordinary moments like they were miracles. Outside, the cool late afternoon air wrapped around her, and she took a deep breath. Her car hummed to life, and she headed toward their neighborhood. The one she'd grown up in. The one he still lived in. The one whose streets felt like old familiar sentences she could recite in her sleep. She turned onto the road where their childhood home stood. Hers still well kept by her parents. His with the newer mailbox they'd painted navy blue last year. And there he was, standing in his driveway, hands in his pockets, staring at something she couldn't see from her car. A loose strand of his hair fell across his forehead, and he pushed it away absent-mindedly. He wore that soft gray t-shirt she loved, the one that made his shoulders look broader than he believed they were. She pulled over and rolled down her window. "Hey, stranger," she called. He startled just enough to be adorable, then grinned with that quiet warmth that always made her heart feel like it was stepping into a sunbeam. "Oh, hey, I didn't think you'd be over here today." "I wasn't planning to," she said lightly. "Then I thought, why deprive the world's greatest guy of my presence?" His face warmed. She could tell even from a distance. He looked down with a shy smile. "The world's greatest guy? Seems like a stretch." "It's not," she said simply. And it wasn't. He had never believed her when she said things like that, but he never argued too hard. Deep down, he wanted to believe it. She could hear it in the softness of his voice. She parked and stepped out. The late sun cast an orange glow across the pavement as she walked toward him. "So what are you doing? Contemplating the mysteries of the universe? Or just forgetting your keys again?" He rubbed the back of his neck in that familiar gesture of embarrassment. The second one." She laughed, bright and effortless. "Classic." He looked at her, really looked at her. His expression shifted, almost tender, like he was memorizing her for the 1,000th time. "Do you want to come in?" he asked softly. Always. Inside, the living room felt like stepping into a memory. Framed photos of their families at barbecues lined the mantel. A blanket she had knit during college was folded neatly on the couch. Her mug still sat on the bottom shelf of the cabinet, exactly where she'd left it months ago. Not because they weren't close, they were impossibly close, but because every time she used it, he washed it carefully and put it back like it was something precious. He walked ahead of her, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. He was nervous. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders. "Everything okay?" she asked. He hesitated. "Yeah, I just didn't expect to see you today. I can go if it's a bad time." "No," he said quickly, then softened. "No, I like when you're here." Warmth bloomed in her chest. She sat on the couch, patting the cushion beside her. "Then come sit. Tell me what's new." He joined her, careful not to sit too close, careful in the way someone is when closeness means too much. She resisted the urge to lean into him, to close the inch of space between them. Someday soon, she thought. They talked about work, about the upcoming family barbecue their parents were planning, about the weird smell coming from his dishwasher. She teased him. He blushed. They laughed, easy and bright, filling the room with all the affection neither of them dared put into words. As the evening dimmed, Sierra glanced at him, content. He didn't know it yet, he might not know it for months, but she would wait. Not passively, not hopelessly, just faithfully. She had loved him across years, across changing seasons, across all the little versions of themselves they had grown through. She could wait a little longer for him to catch up. But as she leaned back and he glanced at her with that soft, aching longing he thought she didn't see, she wondered, just briefly, if a little longer might be ending sooner than he realized. Chapter 2, The Man Who Knows Too Much, except one thing, he always noticed her before she noticed him. That had been true since they were teenagers, when she'd sweep into a room like sunlight spilling through a window, laughing at something someone said 3 houses away, and he'd catch himself smiling before she even reached him. Back then, he thought it was just a crush, something small, a flutter, a phase. At 27, he understood that whatever he felt for Sierra Preston wasn't a flutter. It was the entire storm. He sat on the edge of his bed the next morning, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it might give him answers. Last night replayed in his head on a loop, her smile, her voice, the brush of her hand when she'd reached for the remote. Nothing unusual, nothing romantic, nothing that should have thrown his entire equilibrium off its axis. Except it did. Because every moment with her felt like something he wasn't allowed to want. He rubbed his eyes and muttered, "Get it together, man." The universe did not, regrettably, respond. Downstairs, he poured himself cereal, staring blankly as the milk cascaded in. He ate 3 spoonfuls, remembered that Sierra existed, and then lost his appetite entirely. He wasn't stupid. He wasn't blind. He saw the way she looked at him sometimes, warm and open and far too kind for someone like him. He knew she cared deeply, but that wasn't the same thing as being in love. Not in the real, soul-twisting, future-shaping way he felt it. He'd placed her on a pedestal so tall it practically grazed the atmosphere, and now the idea of reaching for her felt like stepping off a cliff. By 9 a.m., he was at his job, the small office of a local logistics company. The place always smelled faintly of cardboard and communal coffee, and today it felt even drabber than usual. He clocked in, greeted his coworkers, and sat at his desk surrounded by stacks of shipping records. A few people chatted near the break room, but he wasn't in the mood to join. He wasn't sure how one participated in casual workplace banter while actively experiencing a full-scale emotional implosion. Around 10:30, his coworker Marco leaned over the partition separating their desks. Marco was loud, friendly, and perpetually convinced every problem could be solved with confidence. A gym membership, or both. "Yo," Marco said. "You look like you slept in a dumpster." "Thanks," he replied dryly. "Really appreciate the support. Just keeping it real, man." Marco folded his arms. "What's going on with you? Girl problems?" He froze. "What? No. Why would you think that?" "Because guys don't look like that unless they're in love or constipated. And you don't seem constipated." He sighed loudly, dropping his forehead onto his stack of papers. "I'm fine. Sure. And I'm Taylor Swift's backup dancer. It's nothing. Just complicated." Marco grinned. "Let me guess. You're into someone way out of your league." He sat up a little too fast. "Why would you assume she's out of my... I mean, it's not. Look, can we not do this?" "Relax." Marco laughed. "You like her. So what? Just tell her." "I can't," he muttered. "Because? Because she deserves someone impressive." Marco stared at him like he had just declared the sky was made of lasagna. "Dude, women aren't out here hunting for Marvel superheroes. If she likes you back, she likes you. Not muscles, not cars, not whatever nonsense you think you're missing." He knew Marco meant well. The guy had the emotional depth of a motivational poster, but his heart was in the right place. Still, the words hit too close to a wound he'd been nursing for years. "She's different," he said softly. "She's everything good. Like she's made of all the things I'm not." "Well, yeah," Marco said, shrugging. "That's the whole point of liking someone. They're supposed to be special. Doesn't mean they're too good for you." But he didn't believe that. Not really. Not when Sierra shined so brightly she made entire rooms feel warmer. Not when she was always so assured, so straightforward, so quietly luminous. "If she rejected me," he said under his breath, "I'd lose her. And that, I can't do." Marco's expression softened a bit. "Then you're stuck. Either shoot your shot or suffer silently until one of you dies. Those options are terrible. Welcome to romance, bro." He groaned, pushing his chair back. He needed air, or a time machine, or possibly witness protection. Later that afternoon, he checked his phone and saw a message from Sierra. "Wanna come over tonight? I made too much food again." His heart performed a small, joyful front flip, then immediately face-planted into dread. He typed, "Can't tonight. Sorry." Her reply came a moment later. "No worries. Rain check." 3 harmless words. And yet he felt like he'd just punched himself in the chest. He shoved his phone into his pocket. He hated disappointing her. He hated pulling away. But every time she invited him over, every time she smiled at him like he was something steady and good, his fear clawed at him. Loving her quietly was painful. Losing her would be catastrophic. So he did what he always did. He chose the pain he thought he could survive. That evening, he sat in his quiet living room, the television flickering in front of him. A show played, he wasn't sure which, and he didn't really care. His thoughts drifted helplessly back to Sierra. Her soft laugh. The way she leaned her head slightly when she listened. The spark in her eyes when she talked about dreams she pretended she didn't have anymore. She was the best part of his world. The brightest, the warmest, and he was terrified of ruining everything by reaching for her. He closed his eyes, letting the ache settle. Maybe someday he'd be brave enough. Someday. But not yet. Not today. Chapter 3, History in the Making. Sierra Preston had always believed that certain people drift into your life by accident, but others arrive with purpose, even if the universe disguises it behind moving trucks and cardboard boxes. She was 14 the summer her parents moved into the quiet neighborhood where everything began. Their new house was 2 doors down from a family her mother described as good people with good hearts, something that had mattered to the Prestons even more than square footage. The first person Sierra saw the day they arrived was him. Lanky, slightly awkward, standing in his driveway holding a basketball like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to greet the new neighbors or pretend he hadn't noticed them. He noticed them. He noticed her. And even then, it wasn't the flustered gaze of a boy who'd spotted a pretty girl. It was softer, curious, as if he sensed something important was happening and didn't quite know what to do with the feeling. Her mother called her over to help unload a box, but Sierra had already drifted a step forward, drawn by a gravitational pull she didn't have a name for yet. "You can say hi, sweetheart," her mom said, amused. "He's not going to bite." Sierra rolled her eyes at the implication that she was too shy. It wasn't shyness, it was intrigue, and maybe a bit of nerves she would never admit out loud. She marched right up to him. "Hi," she said. "I'm Sierra. We just moved here." His grip tightened slightly on the basketball. "I noticed." The blunt honesty made her grin. "Do you live here?" He nodded toward the house. "Yeah, since forever." "Cool." She gestured to the hoop behind him. "You any good?" "Not really." She laughed, delighted by his sincerity. Most boys she knew tried to impress her with bravado, even when they had no business doing so. But this one, he had no pretenses, no ego, just an earnestness that wrapped around her like a breeze on a hot day. "Want to play?" she asked. He blinked in mild panic. Sure." 10 minutes later, Sierra was dribbling past him with a confidence she had absolutely no right to have. She missed half her shots, but he never teased her for it. He just smiled, that soft, crooked smile she would come to treasure, and passed the ball back every time. Their mothers watched from their respective driveways, whispering to each other with knowing grins. Thus began the first chapter of a friendship neither of them could have predicted and everyone else saw coming from miles away. By the time high school rolled around, they were inseparable. He was the steady presence beside her in crowded hallways, the quiet balance to her expressive energy. She kept him laughing. He kept her grounded. Their parents became best friends, hosting barbecues, game nights, and holiday gatherings that blurred the lines between family and neighbor. At school, people talked. Of course they did. Sierra and he were always together, studying in the library, sharing fries in the cafeteria, walking home under the orange streetlights when after-school clubs ran late. "You two are so cute," one girl had said sophomore year, leaning against a locker with the unsubtle curiosity of someone fishing for gossip. "Are you like a thing?" Sierra had shrugged. "I don't know. Are we?" He nearly dropped his entire binder right onto the floor. The girl squealed. "So you are." Sierra didn't correct her. Why would she? If people thought he was taken, that meant she didn't have to compete with every passing crush who might suddenly discover what she already knew. That he was quietly wonderful, quietly thoughtful, quietly irresistible in the ways that mattered. She didn't need loud attention, flashy gestures, or dramatic declarations. She just needed him. There were small moments she collected the way other girls collected jewelry. Like the time he showed up at her house with a stack of textbooks the day before finals. "You said you were stressed," he explained awkwardly. "So I thought we could study together." Or the time they sat on the curb after a school dance neither of them wanted to attend but both had somehow been dragged into. She'd kicked off her shoes, complaining dramatically about her aching feet, and he'd quietly placed his jacket under them so she wouldn't scrape her heels. Or the time he defended her when someone made a snide comment about her being too confident. "She's not too confident," he'd said. "She just knows who she is. You should try it." He said it softly, not for attention, not for points, but simply because he believed it. Those were the things Sierra fell in love with. Not his height or his face or any superficial detail. His character, his empathy, his unwavering goodness. He didn't know how she looked at him sometimes. The way her heart warmed, the way her stomach fluttered, the way her future quietly rearranged itself to accommodate the possibility of him. She wasn't in a rush. She didn't need a confession. She just needed time. She made a promise to herself the night before graduation, lying on the hood of his car as they stared up at the stars. If he doesn't figure it out by the time I'm 30, she whispered to the universe, I'll tell him myself. But she hoped, deeply earnestly, that he'd get there sooner. As Sierra stepped into the present moment, curled on her couch with a mug of tea, she let the memories wash over her like warm waves. So much had happened in the years since. Jobs, moves, holidays, losses, triumphs. But her connection to him remained the one unwavering constant in a world that often changed too fast. She sipped her tea, smiling. He thought he wasn't worthy of her. If only he understood that she hadn't been waiting for a perfect man. She'd been waiting for him. The imperfect, gentle, wonderfully human soul who had unknowingly held her heart since that first day with the basketball and the shy smile. Someday, she whispered, you're going to realize. And when that day came, she would meet him in the middle with open arms, ready to start the chapter they'd been writing their whole lives. Chapter 4, Present Day, Unspoken Tension. By Thursday evening, Sierra had decided the universe had stalled long enough. It wasn't impatience. Not really. She had mastered patience the way some people mastered instruments or languages, through lifelong practice and more than a little stubbornness. But after his sudden distance the last couple of days, the shorter texts, the apologetic tone, the sudden busy nights, she felt the shift. Not a breaking, just a retreat. And Sierra Preston did not tolerate retreat. She needed to bring him back into her orbit. Gently, strategically, and, if necessary, with snacks. Which is why she stood in the snack aisle of their neighborhood grocery store at 6:17 p.m., holding 2 bags of popcorn, 1 buttery, 1 kettle, and debating which flavor better communicated. Hey, remember how we're best friends and you adore me? Come be near me again. Kettle corn 1. By the time she reached his house, dusk had settled into a soft lavender across the sky. She knocked lightly, though she knew she didn't have to. She'd walked in unannounced more times than either of them could count. But tonight she wanted his permission. She wanted him to open the door and choose her. He did. He blinked in surprise when he saw her standing there with popcorn and stubborn resolve. Oh, hey, you didn't say you were coming over. You didn't ask what my evening plans were, she replied cheerfully, brushing past him into the living room. Therefore, I am a surprise. He closed the door behind her, flustered but unable to hide the smile tugging at his mouth. You're always a surprise, flattery noted. She moved around his living room like it was a second home, which it was, placing her bag on the coffee table, fluffing a pillow that didn't need fluffing, adjusting the angle of the lamp for purely dramatic effect. When she finally sat on the couch, she patted the space beside her. Movie night. You, me, popcorn, the potential collapse of your emotional defenses. He stared at her. The what? She tossed him the kettle corn. Pick a movie. He hesitated a moment too long enough for her to see it, that tiny crack of distance he'd been building up all week. But then he sat down beside her, not quite touching her, but close enough that her heart fluttered in triumph. You didn't have to do all this, he murmured. I know, she said brightly. That's what makes it powerful. He shook his head with a small laugh. You're impossible. And yet you keep me around. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The softness in his eyes spoke loudly enough. They chose a comedy, something light, something with enough wit to keep things easy. 10 minutes in, Sierra slid a little closer. Not enough to alarm him, just enough to close the gap that had never felt so unnecessary. He shifted slightly, pretending the movement was casual. It wasn't. She could see every tiny, nervous calculation play out on his face. The way he straightened his shoulders. The way he tried to focus on the screen while his peripheral vision tracked every micro movement she made. It was adorable. Painful but adorable. Halfway through the movie, he reached for the popcorn bowl at the exact same moment she did. Their fingers brushed. He froze like she'd electrocuted him. She did not pull away. In fact, she let her hand linger for half a second longer than necessary. A test. A nudge. A reminder. His breath hitched, barely audible, but she heard it. She always heard it. You okay? She asked casually, taking a sip from her water bottle. HM? Yeah. Totally fine. You're not being weird? I'm never weird. Sweetheart, she said, patting his knee gently. You are the entire weird. He buried his face in his hands. Why do you say things like that? Because I enjoy truth. She paused. And reactions. The movie played on, but the real story, their story, unfolded in the silent spaces between them. The way he laughed, then glanced at her to see if she laughed too. The way she deliberately leaned into him when she stretched, pretending it was innocent. The way he swallowed hard when her shoulder brushed his. The way she caught him staring once, twice, 3 times. By the time the credits rolled, Sierra knew exactly what she needed to know. He wasn't pulling away because he didn't want her. He was pulling away because he wanted her too much. Which meant he was closer than he thought to breaking his own silence. And she wasn't about to let fear win. As he stood to collect empty snack bags, she touched his wrist lightly. He paused, meeting her eyes. Thank you for tonight, she said softly. You don't have to thank me for hanging out. I'm thanking you anyway. Her smile gentled. You're important to me. He froze just a flicker, barely there, but she felt the shift in the air. Yeah, he whispered. You're important to me too. There it was. A crack in the armor. A breath of truth. A beginning. Sierra stepped back, grabbing her bag. Same time next week? She asked, tone playful but intention sharp. His throat worked as he swallowed. Yeah, definitely. She walked toward the door, glancing over her shoulder in one last teasing spark of momentum. You know where to find me if you miss me before then. He didn't respond, but his expression said everything. Chapter 5. A push from Mom. A panic from him. Saturday morning sunlight filtered through Sierra's kitchen window, catching dust motes that danced like glitter in the air. She sat at the table sipping coffee, replaying Thursday's movie night moment by moment. The way he'd looked at her. The way his breath had hitched when their fingers brushed. The shy, almost awestruck glances he tried so hard to hide. He was close. The universe didn't often speak clearly, but when it did, Sierra listened. And right now it was whispering words of imminent breakthrough. Her phone buzzed on the table. Mom, brunch today? Your aunt's coming. She claims she has important romantic insights. Sierra snorted into her coffee and typed, on my way in 15. Prepare yourselves. Brunch at her parents' house was always lively, but today it felt like walking into a strategic summit. Her mother and aunt sat at the table with knowing smiles that suggested they had been discussing her love life without her, which was expected. Maybe even tradition. There's our girl, her aunt said, pulling Sierra into a hug. You look glowy. I look like I woke up 30 minutes ago, Sierra said. Her mother waved this off. Same thing. Sit. We need updates. Sierra rolled her eyes, took a sip of orange juice, and relayed everything. The popcorn movie night, the way he nervously hovered between leaning closer and running away, the soft confession of importance. Her aunt clasped her hands dramatically. He's in love with you. I know, Sierra said calmly. He's so in love with you, her mother added, leaning back in her chair. I know. Her mother exchanged a look with her sister. Then why? She asked. Hasn't he said anything yet? Sierra sighed. Because he thinks he isn't enough for me. Her aunt scoffed. Nonsense. He's exactly your type. He is my type, Sierra agreed. He just doesn't know that my type is him. Her mother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Sweetheart, this is simple. He needs time. Time, yes, her aunt agreed. But not forever. You can nudge him without scaring him. Nudge gently, her mother added. Subtle, soft, patient? Or, her aunt said, you can corner him emotionally and demand he confess. Sierra choked on her juice. I'm sorry, what? Just putting options on the table. Her mother glared. Don't put that option on the table. Her aunt shrugged unapologetically. Sierra laughed, warmth spreading through her chest. She'd always been lucky. Blessed, really, to have a family who understood her heart even when she wasn't speaking. He'll get there, her mother said in a softer tone. He always does. Sierra nodded, feeling a quiet certainty settle in her bones. Yeah, he will. Across town he was spiraling. Not metaphorically, not melodramatically. Literally spiraling, pacing in circles around his living room, hands tangled in his hair, muttering things like, okay, breathe, and this is fine. And at one frantic point, I should move to Canada. His thoughts were a wild, discordant parade. She came over. She sat next to me. She touched my hand. She smelled like shampoo and impending doom. He stopped pacing long enough to flop onto his couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. His heart thudded too hard, too fast, not from fear of her, but fear of himself. Fear that he was letting too much show. Fear that she'd see the truth shining through him like sunlight through thin curtains. His phone buzzed. Marco, he groaned. The last thing he needed was Mr. Shoot Your Shot checking in. The message read, did you do it? Did you confess? Is she your girlfriend now? He typed back, no, nothing happened. Marco immediately called him. Dude, why not? Because, he snapped, which was not an explanation but was the only thing his panic allowed. Marco sighed dramatically. Bro, at this point you're emotionally constipated. That's not a thing. It is a thing, and you have it. Bad. He pinched the bridge of his nose. I'm not talking about this. You like her, Marco said, unfazed. She probably likes you. What's the worst that could happen? She could say no, he whispered. So what? You're already her friend. You'd bounce back. No, he said quietly. I wouldn't. And that was the truth. The truth he never voiced. The truth that left him paralyzed. If he lost her, there would be nothing to bounce back to. Marco sighed sympathetically for once. Look, man, I get it. Feelings are scary. But hiding from them forever? That's worse. Not for me, he said, sinking deeper into the couch. Then what are you going to do? Keep pretending you don't love her until you're 80. He didn't answer. Marco groaned. You're killing me. Just give it thought, okay? He hung up, leaving him alone with his spiraling thoughts. He dropped his phone on the couch cushion and whispered to himself, she deserves someone better. It wasn't self-pity. It wasn't insecurity for insecurity's sake. It was conviction, misguided, deeply rooted, painfully earnest conviction. He cared about her so much that he had convinced himself staying silent was the kindest thing he could do. And yet, every day, silence hurt a little more. Sierra returned home after brunch feeling energized and determined, a combination her aunt always referred to as dangerous in the best way. She pulled out her phone, thumbs hovering over the screen. Hey, wanna come over tomorrow? I'm trying a new recipe and need a brave volunteer. She hesitated. Too direct? Too subtle? Too soon after Thursday? Then she remembered her mother's voice. Enjoy the ride until he catches up. She hit send. Across town, he saw the message appear on his lock screen and felt his chest tighten. Panic surged. But beneath it, hope flickered. Small, quiet, fragile. But there. He typed back. Yeah, I'd like that. And Sierra smiled. Forward momentum, she thought. Finally. Chapter 6. The Great Pull-Away Disaster. Sunday arrived with the bright, easy warmth of early afternoon sunlight. The kind of day meant for fresh starts, hopeful moments, and slow-building romance. Instead, it became a day of chaos. To be fair, Sierra had not intended for chaos. She had intended for something closer to gentle prompting. Encouragement. A nudge with cinnamon sugar sprinkles. But intentions, as fate often proved, could be completely undone by one overly anxious man with a talent for emotional avoidance. She spent the late morning prepping lunch, a new recipe she'd been excited to try, lemon herb chicken with roasted vegetables. Something comforting, something homey, something that said, hey, see how cozy and together our lives could be? At exactly 1:07 p.m., he texted, hey, I might be a little late. Sierra blinked. Late? Him? He was the human embodiment of punctuality. He arrived early to everything, movies, appointments, her house, life in general. The last time he'd been late for anything was sophomore year when he overslept after studying until 3 a.m. He had apologized for 3 days straight. So, might be a little late translated in Sierra's mind to, I am panicking and retreating but trying to hide it behind politeness. She exhaled through her nose, steady and patient. Okay, fine. She could roll with this. At 1:32 p.m. he knocked. When she opened the door, her heart squeezed. He looked nervous, really nervous, hands in his pockets, shoulders drawn tight, eyes shifting like he was preparing to take a standardized test he hadn't studied for. You made it, Sierra said gently. Yeah, he said, swallowing. Sorry. Got caught up in something. Everything okay? Yep, totally fine. The lie was subtle, but she saw it anyway. Still, she stepped back. Come in. The moment he entered her apartment, she felt the shift. Normally, he relaxed in her space, like her presence unwound all the tightly wound threads inside him. Today, however, he was stiff, awkward, physically present but mentally several thousand miles away. He hovered near the doorway like a polite ghost. Sierra narrowed her eyes. You can sit down, you know? Oh, right. He chose the farthest corner of the couch and perched on it like he expected it to reject him. Sierra took a slow breath. Okay, soft approach first. She sat near him, not too close, not too far. I made lunch. You didn't have to, he said automatically. I know. I wanted to. He nodded but didn't look at her. Strike one. She tried again. It smells good, right? I think I finally nailed the seasoning. Yeah, he said, still not looking at her. Strike two. She leaned forward, scanning his expression. Are you sure you're okay? You seem tense. I'm fine, he said a little too quickly. Just tired. Tired like, I stayed up too late? Or tired like, I'm pretending to be tired so I can avoid eye contact? That earned her a tiny smile, but it vanished almost instantly. He stood abruptly. Can I help with anything? The food? Plates? Something? You can sit back down, she said softly. He froze, halfway to the kitchen. Sierra's heart tightened. Something was wrong. Not wrong, but wrong enough. Hey, she said, rising slowly. Talk to me. He shook his head. It's nothing. It's not nothing if you're acting like you're about to sprint out the door. I'm not. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling shakily. I'm trying to give you space. Space? She repeated. From what? He avoided her eyes. From me. The words hit harder than she expected. Why? She asked quietly. Would I ever want space from you? He shrugged helplessly, a dozen emotions flickering across his face. Because I don't want to get in the way. In the way of what? Of your life, he said, almost a whisper. Of who you deserve. Her breath caught. There it was. The fear. The insecurity. The false belief he clung to like a lifeline. She stepped toward him. You think being here is getting in the way? He didn't answer. You think you are getting in the way? His jaw tightened. I don't want to mess things up. Sierra stared at him, heart aching, realizing the truth behind every awkward moment, every pulled back glance, every sudden apology. He wasn't pulling away because he didn't care. He was pulling away because he cared too much. And because he didn't believe he deserved the very thing he wanted most. Her. She exhaled slowly, patiently. You're not in the way. He finally met her eyes, and she saw how afraid he was to believe her. His voice cracked slightly. I don't want to be selfish. Selfish? She shook her head. Sweetheart, wanting to spend time with someone who cares about you isn't selfish. But what if you change your mind? He whispered. What if I make a mistake? What if I ruin everything? You're not going to ruin anything. You don't know that. I do, she said firmly, stepping close enough that he had no choice but to hear her breath. Because you don't ruin things. You fix them. You support them. You make them stronger just by being there. He looked shaken, vulnerable, as if he wasn't used to being spoken to like that with unwavering certainty. And maybe he wasn't. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then said, I think I should go. Her chest clenched. If you leave now, you're going to think you made the right decision. He froze. But you didn't, she continued softly. You'd be leaving because you're scared, not because you don't want to be here. He swallowed, hard. And then, voice raw, he whispered, I am scared. She stepped forward, closing the final inch between them. Not touching him, not yet, but close enough that her presence became something he couldn't ignore. I know, she said gently, but you don't have to run from me. He closed his eyes like her words physically hit him. For a moment, the world held still. The quiet hum of the apartment, the fading sunlight outside, the tension between them thick enough to shape into something new. Then, slowly, he exhaled. I'm sorry, he murmured. I didn't mean to make this weird. You didn't, she said, soft but steady. You just made it real. She saw the truth land, felt him absorb it, felt the crack in his fear widen by a fraction. He didn't leave. He sank back onto the couch, shoulders loosening just a little, as if he was finally allowing himself to believe she wanted him there. And Sierra, standing before him, knew one thing for certain. He was closer than ever. He just needed one more push. Chapter 7, the almost confession, the next week unfolded awkwardly. Not in the catastrophic way Sierra feared, but in the delicate, painfully obvious way of two people trying very hard not to scare each other. He texted her. He replied promptly. He showed up for their usual routines. But there was a nervousness beneath his smile, a gentleness behind every step closer, like he was trying to navigate an emotional minefield without a guide, which Sierra realized he kind of was. So when both their families decided to host a joint Sunday barbecue, a tradition going back 15 years, Sierra recognized the perfect opportunity. Not for a grand confession. Not yet. But enough closeness, enough familiarity, enough nudging to get him one step closer to understanding the truth she'd been holding for so long. She arrived early at her parents' house, helping her mom arrange picnic tables and lemonade pitchers. The backyard buzzed with the comforting chaos of family gatherings. Her aunt arguing with the grill, her mother humming to herself, kids darting between lawn chairs like caffeinated squirrels. Then she saw him walk in through the back gate, carrying a bag of ice and a cautious but warm smile. Her heart lifted. He made his way to her, steps a little too careful. Hey yourself, she said, bumping her shoulder into his lightly. You made it. He smiled, small but genuine. Wouldn't miss it. But his eyes flicked briefly to the ground, a tell she'd memorized years ago. He was nervous. Good, she thought. Nervous meant he cared. The afternoon unfolded with the comforting ease of old routines. He helped her father set up the canopy. He carried trays for her mother. He let her aunt boss him around with the gentle authority of a woman who had known him since he was a gangly 15-year-old. Every now and then, Sierra would catch him watching her. Those brief, soft glances that hit her like warm wind. She'd smile. He'd look away quickly. As the sun dipped lower, guests drifted into small conversation circles. Sierra's parents, as usual, assigned them a shared task, bringing extra folding chairs from the garage. Perfect. When they stepped inside the garage, the sudden quiet wrapped around them like a held breath. Dusty sunlight filtered through the high window, catching the floating specks in golden haze. He stopped near the workbench, hands in his pockets. I didn't realize how many people were coming today. Family events, she said, shrugging. They multiply. He nodded but didn't move toward the chairs. Sierra took a slow step toward him. You okay? You seem somewhere else. He exhaled softly. I'm just thinking about. He hesitated. Then, quietly, barely audible, you. Her breath caught. Not because she was surprised he thought about her. She had known that for years, but hearing it aloud, that was new. She took a gentle step closer. What about me? He leaned against the workbench, eyes fixed on the floor. I don't want to ruin things. You're not going to, she said softly. He shook his head. You don't know that. I do. No, he said, voice trembling just a little. You don't. Because if I tell you something and it messes everything up. Her heart raced. This is it, she thought. He's there. He's finally there. She stayed still, patient, open. What is it? She whispered. He swallowed, throat bobbing. It's just, sometimes I wonder if maybe I'm... The garage door opened. Her aunt's voice boomed in, cheerful and loud enough to shake the rafters. Kids, we need one more table. Also someone tell your father to stop poking the chicken. He jerked back, startled like a deer in headlights. The moment shattered, delicate as glass dropped on stone. Sierra closed her eyes in a silent plea to every cosmic force she could think of. Not now. Not when he was on the verge. Not when his heart was finally opening. By the time she opened her eyes again, he had stepped back, retreating into the familiar safety of unfinished sentences and swallowed truths. He started, rubbing his arm. We should go bring the chairs. She stared at him, frustration and heartbreak colliding inside her chest. He wasn't running away. He wasn't closing off. But he was scared. Still convinced that whatever lived inside him was dangerous if spoken aloud. She took one chair into her hands. He took another. As they walked back toward the backyard, their arms brushing occasionally, Sierra swallowed the ache in her throat. He was on the edge. So close. One word away. But close wasn't enough. Not anymore. Night fell, bringing the barbecue to its warm, comfortable end. People packed up leftovers. Kids dozed in lawn chairs. Laughter faded into the soft hum of crickets. He stood near the back gate, hands deep in his pockets again, as Sierra approached. You leaving? She asked, keeping her voice gentle. Yeah, he said. I should. She nodded. Thanks for helping out. Anytime. There was a pause, one full heartbeat too long. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He started. She held her breath. Then he said, good night. She smiled softly, masking the disappointment swirling beneath. Good night. He walked away through the gate, shoulders tense, the posture of a man holding too many words in his chest. When he disappeared down the street, Sierra let out a long exhale. She wouldn't give up. She wouldn't lose faith. But tonight, she understood something important. He wasn't going to confess because he was ready. He was going to confess because he had no other choice. And she would make sure that moment came soon. Very soon. Chapter 8. Sierra takes the lead. Sierra had always been patient, but patience and passivity were not the same thing. And after the Sunday barbecue, after watching him stand on the very edge of honesty only to retreat at the last second, she felt a quiet resolve settle over her like a cloak. Enough waiting. Enough hoping he'd take the final step on his own. He was close, yes, closer than ever. But fear was still holding him back, and Sierra understood something important. Fear didn't vanish on its own. Sometimes someone had to reach out a hand. Someone had to guide. Someone had to lead. And Sierra Preston had spent 13 years knowing exactly how to lead him with care. She texted him on Tuesday evening. Come over? I need help with something. It was vague on purpose, not manipulative, just strategic. Direct invitations sometimes made him skittish. But, I need help? That grounded him. It gave him purpose. And when he felt purposeful, he felt brave. He replied almost immediately. Of course. Be there in 10. She smiled. Predictable. Sweetly predictable. Her favorite trait of his, really. When he arrived, he looked calmer than she expected. Still nervous, but not overwhelmed. His hair was slightly mussed from the breeze, and he wore his soft navy hoodie, the one she liked because it made him look like a human comfort object. What did you need help with? He asked. You'll see, she said, gesturing him inside. The apartment was tidier than usual, not in an artificial, staged way, but in a deliberate way. She wanted the atmosphere to feel safe, warm, familiar. Their sanctuary. Everything okay? He asked, sensing something in her tone. Yeah, she said softly. We just need to talk. He froze. Not a dramatic, eyes-wide freeze. More like a subtle stiffening of shoulders. A shift of breath held too tightly. Oh, he said. Sure. She motioned to the couch. Sit with me. He did cautiously, like sitting too fast might break the floor. She turned toward him, folding one leg beneath her, and waited until he met her eyes. Hey, she said gently. You scared me a little on Sunday. His head snapped up. I what? I didn't mean to. I know, she said. But you pulled away again. You were going to tell me something in the garage. And then you didn't. Color warmed his cheeks. It wasn't important. It was, she corrected. It was very important. He swallowed. She continued, voice softer. You don't have to tell me everything all at once. But you do need to stop running. You keep stepping toward me and then panicking and stepping back. His eyes darted away. I'm not trying to panic. I know. She leaned closer. That's the problem. You're trying so hard not to feel anything that you're feeling everything. He exhaled shakily, shoulders slumping. I don't know how to do this. Do what? She asked. His answer came out barely above a whisper. Want something without messing it up. Her heart nearly broke. She reached out, slowly, giving him time, and rested her hand on his. His breath caught, but he didn't pull away. You're not going to mess anything up by being honest, she said. You never have. He finally looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes was so raw she felt it like a physical ache. Sierra, he murmured. You don't understand. You're you. And I'm just... Stop, she said, tightening her grip on his hand. I'm not higher up than you. I'm not out of reach. I'm not on a pedestal you put me on years ago when you convinced yourself I needed some perfect guy. His breath hitched. She leaned closer, eyes steady. I don't need a perfect guy. I need you. I've only ever needed you. He blinked, stunned, disbelieving, frozen with the weight of the truth he'd been too afraid to name. And Sierra knew it was time. Time to take the lead. Time to pull him forward instead of waiting for him to stumble his way to her. She spoke softly, lovingly, deliberately. I know you love me. The air went completely still. His lips parted. Not in denial. Not in shock. In pure, naked, terrified recognition. Sierra. His voice broke. You've loved me for years, she said, brushing her thumb over the back of his hand. You think I don't see it? I've always seen it. He shook his head slightly, overwhelmed. I didn't want to scare you away. You couldn't if you tried. He drew a shaky breath, eyes glistening. But I'm not. I'm not some impressive guy. I'm not strong or bold or... You're everything I want, she said firmly. You always have been. Silence. Then, like a dam cracking under gentle pressure, he whispered, I'm so afraid of losing you. You're not going to lose me, she said. You don't know that. I do, she whispered, because I've loved you just as long. His breath stopped. Everything about him, his posture, his expression, the way his fingers curled around hers, shifted at once. The fear didn't vanish, but it softened, reshaped by the truth he had never let himself imagine. You love me? He asked, voice trembling. She smiled, leaning her forehead against his. Yes, I do. I've been waiting for you to figure it out. He let out a sound, half laugh, half disbelief, entirely emotional. I'm such an idiot. You're my idiot, she murmured. He closed his eyes, breathing her in like she was the first safe thing he'd ever held. And for the first time in 13 years, he didn't retreat. He leaned into her. He let himself feel. And Sierra, heart full and steady, felt the final barrier fall away. At last. Chapter 9, his turn to catch up. He didn't sleep that night. Not because he was stressed or anxious or trapped in one of his usual spirals, though the emotional cocktail swirling inside him certainly contained all three. No, he didn't sleep because every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, heard her words. I've loved you just as long. He lay flat on his back, staring at the ceiling like it might offer a map out of the maze he'd built around himself. The room was dim and quiet, but inside his chest, chaos. Glorious, terrifying chaos. She loved him. She had loved him for years. Not theoretically. Not accidentally. Not in the way friends sometimes love each other casually, without depth or consequence. She loved him in the exact way he had prayed for, feared, and denied. He turned onto his side, clutching his pillow helplessly, whispering into the dark, oh no. It was the most joyful oh no of his life. When he arrived at work the next morning, he was useless, completely non-functional. He typed the same shipping code 3 times before realizing it was missing 2 digits. When Marco swaggered past with his usual morning energy drink, he didn't even look up. Yo, Marco said, tapping his cubicle wall. You look like you saw a ghost. He swallowed. Worse. What's worse than a ghost? He whispered. She likes me. Marco blinked. You're upset about that? No. No, I'm... His hands flailed helplessly. I'm short-circuiting. Marco stared at him. Why does that sound like good news? It is good news, he said, slumping forward until his forehead hit the desk with a soft thunk. It's the best news. It's... Marco waited, sipping his drink. He sat back up slowly. I don't know what I'm doing. Congratulations, Marco said. You're in love. I've been in love. Yes, but now you're mutually in love. Marco grinned. Totally different beast. Much scarier. He groaned. This is a disaster. Buddy. Marco leaned on the cubicle wall. The definition of disaster is literally the opposite of what's happening to you. I know, he said, pressing a hand to his chest. That's why it's terrifying. What if I do something wrong? What if I say something stupid? What if she realizes that you're awesome? Marco cut in. Yeah, huge risk. He glared. Marco smirked. You've been in love with her for how long? Marco asked. He almost choked. Do not make me say it out loud. So years. He covered his face with both hands. Yes. And she's been in love with you for the same number of years. He paused, lowered his hands. Yeah. Then, Marco said with a shrug. Maybe stop assuming you're going to ruin something you've both kept alive for over a decade. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Ha! Exactly. Now text her before your brain melts. He did text her, eventually, but it wasn't a confession. He needed more than a text. He needed more than a moment. He needed the right time, the right clarity. He needed to look her in the eyes and tell her everything he'd held inside for 10 painstaking years. So he wrote, Can we talk tonight? In person. Her response came a heartbeat later. Yes, of course. Just 2 words, warm and steady. He clutched his phone to his chest like an emotionally overwhelmed Victorian heroine. The walk to Sierra's apartment that evening felt surreal. The air was crisp, and the streetlights glowed softly, illuminating his winding thoughts. Each step felt heavier and lighter all at once. He had carried his feelings like a secret curse, something precious but dangerous. But now he understood it wasn't a curse at all. It was a promise, a future. When she opened her door, he lost his breath entirely. She wasn't done up. She wasn't dressed fancy. She wasn't trying to appear any certain way. She was just Sierra, soft, warm, familiar, beautiful in the effortless way that had undone him since he was 15. "Hey," she said gently. "Hey," he echoed. He stepped inside, and she closed the door behind him. For a moment, neither spoke. Not because the silence was awkward, because it was full, weighted with everything they had yet to say. She gave him a small, encouraging smile. "Come sit." He nodded, joining her on the couch, though this time he didn't sit at the far end. He sat close enough that their knees brushed, close enough that fear had no room left between them. He took a shaky breath. "I'm going to mess this up." "You won't," she said softly. "I might." "You won't." He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. "Okay, so, the thing is, I've been in love with you for a long time." Like, he winced. "A long, long time." Her lips twitched. "I know. That's the problem," he said dramatically. "You've known everything." "I haven't known everything," she said gently. "You knew the important parts. The hard parts." She laughed softly. Not mocking, but warm, affectionate. "I've always known your heart." He swallowed, completely undone. "I didn't think you'd. I never thought I was. I don't know enough." "You are." He shook his head. "No, you don't understand. I'm not this bold guy. I'm not confident. I'm not the person people write romantic stories about. I was so afraid that if I reached for you, I'd lose you." "You won't." "I might," he insisted, voice cracking slightly. "You mean everything to me. Everything. And I thought if I stayed quiet, at least I'd get to keep you in my life. Even if it hurt." Her eyes softened, not pity, but love. Pure, achingly gentle love. "You don't have to be bold," she said. "You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be anything except you. I never wanted someone else." He blinked rapidly, chest tightening. "You really mean that?" "Yes," she whispered. Every word. Something inside him broke open. Not painfully, but beautifully. Like a door unlatched after years of being stuck. He reached out, hesitating once, and she met him halfway, intertwining her fingers with his. His breath caught. Her warmth steadied him. And for the first time in his life, he stopped retreating. "I love you," he said, voice trembling and sure at once. "I love you so much it scares me. I love you in ways I don't even have names for. I love you so much that sometimes I didn't think I could stand it." Tears glimmered in Sierra's eyes, her smile soft and luminous. "I love you too," she whispered. "I always have." He let out a breath, a full, deep, relieved breath, and leaned his forehead against hers, grounding himself in the reality he had feared was impossible. She was his. He was hers. Finally. Chapter 10. New normal, same souls. The morning after their confession felt different. Not dramatically, not in the way the world changed after storms or awakenings. The sun didn't shine brighter. The streets didn't hum with new meaning. But inside Sierra's chest, something felt lighter, like a knot that had been pulled tight for 13 years had finally loosened. She brewed her morning coffee with a smile she couldn't suppress even if she tried. Halfway across town, he woke with the same smile. His nerves were still there, fluttery, fragile, unsure, but they no longer held him hostage. They floated around instead, like bubbles instead of weights. And for the first time in his life, the thought of Sierra didn't ache. It glowed. That afternoon, as if pulled by instinct, they both drifted toward the place where everything had always begun. Their childhood neighborhood. Sierra arrived first and parked near the sidewalk where she had ridden her bike as a teen. She walked slowly toward the familiar houses. Her parents' driveway, his parents' mailbox, the front yard where they'd played basketball at 14. She turned and saw him walking toward her. He wore the soft navy hoodie again, hands tucked in the pockets, hair tousled by the breeze. When he reached her, he stopped, not too close, not too far. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "Hi," he murmured. "Hi." Pause. The comfortable kind, not the hesitant one. He shifted slightly, scratching the back of his neck with a small laugh. "So, this feels surreal." "Which part?" she asked. "All of it." He exhaled slowly. "You, me, the fact that I didn't hallucinate last night." "You didn't," she said, smiling. "Good," he whispered, "because I don't think I've ever been that honest in my entire life." She reached out, fingers brushing his arm. "You were perfect." He blushed. "I was a mess. A perfect mess," she corrected. He breathed out a laugh, small, relieved, full of affection. "Yeah, I guess I can live with that." They began walking down the street together, side by side, like they always had. But something was different now. The space between them wasn't filled with unspoken words or trembling silences. It was filled with ease, with clarity, with them. When they reached her parents' house, they found her mom and aunt in the backyard tending to potted plants. The moment Sierra's aunt saw the two of them emerge hand in hand, she froze mid-watering and shrieked like she'd been waiting her entire life for this exact moment. "I knew it," her aunt yelled. "I absolutely called it." Her mother slapped her arm lightly. "Lower your voice, you'll scare them." "They're in love," her aunt declared. "They're beyond scaring." Sierra covered her face with her free hand while he laughed nervously beside her. Her mother stepped forward, eyes warm. "Sweetheart," she said gently. Finally, he looked down shyly. "Hi, Mrs. Preston. Come here," she said, pulling him into a hug so tight he squeaked. Sierra laughed. "Mom, you're going to break him." "Nonsense," her mother said, patting him affectionately. "He's sturdy enough." Her aunt chimed in. "Sturdy enough for what matters." He turned a shade of red that could only be described as heroic embarrassment. Sierra slipped her hand back into his. "Ignore her," she said softly. "I'll try," he whispered, leaning close. "No promises." Her mother giggled. "You two go on. Be young. Be in love. We'll manage the chaos here." Later, they ended up at his place, the living room where they had sat through countless movies, shared countless snacks, lived countless small moments that now felt like stepping stones leading here. He stood awkwardly for a moment, hands unsure of where to go. "Is this weird?" he asked. "I mean us. Here? Like this?" She stepped closer and placed her palm on his chest, right above his heartbeat. "No," she said. "This is exactly where we were always going." He swallowed. "I still feel like I'm dreaming. Want me to pinch you?" "Absolutely not." She laughed, her forehead resting against his. "Then believe it instead." He let out a breath, soft, steady, full of wonder, and wrapped his arms around her in a way he had imagined for years but never dared to attempt. She melted into him. He held her like she was something fragile and priceless, and she held him like he was something steady and irreplaceable. Perfect balance. Perfect beginning. When they pulled back, he looked at her with a tenderness that made her chest feel full to bursting. "So," he asked, voice quiet but sure, "what do we do now?" Sierra smiled, brushing her thumb along his jaw. "Now," she said, "we start the life we've been building without realizing it. And after that?" She kissed his cheek softly. "Everything." He exhaled, letting the word linger between them like a promise. "Everything," he echoed. That evening, as they curled together on the couch, a new version of a familiar scene, Sierra thought back to the promise she made at 17. If he hasn't figured it out by 30, I'll tell him myself. He hadn't made it to 30. She hadn't needed to confess first. He had reached her. Bravely, vulnerably, beautifully. And now, at last, they were facing the future side by side, hearts aligned, paths entwined. She looked up at him, and he smiled down at her. That soft, crooked smile she had loved for more than a decade. "Hey," she whispered. "Yeah, you caught up." He squeezed her hand. Finally, the world outside moved as usual, cars passing, wind rustling, life continuing. But inside that room, a new chapter began quietly, sweetly, unmistakably. Not a fairy tale, not a fantasy, something better. A love story built from years of quiet devotion, steady companionship, and courage that bloomed late but strong. Their story, at last complete, and just beginning.